Joshua Schaa is the second generation owner of Lighthouse Electric and Solar, founded and operated right here in Cochise County. Quote, "We live in the communities we serve and are passionate about powering the needs, whether that is with solar or electrical." Please welcome Joshua Schaa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for powering through. It's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed all the speakers in front of me, listening to what they've got going on. I personally, I'm a do-it-yourselfer, and I personally remodeled our home with a lot of help. If you wanted a meal on a Saturday, you showed up and I put you to work and we fed you. So very much, that's kind of how we did it for our 6-month project that took 2.5 years. But one of the things I want to talk about a little bit from that experience before I jump into this stuff is one of the things that I found really, really encouraging when I was in the middle of doing that project was that every day I would wake up, I would get a cup of coffee, I would read my Bible, and then I'd pull out my phone and I'd go to OneDrive and I would go to a year back. And lots of apps do it. Doesn't have to be Microsoft. That's what I had. And I would look at where I was a year ago and I go, I'm a lot better than that. And that was just really encouraging for me just to kind of know that I've made some progress. Clay kind of talked about it a little bit, but that was something that I found helpful and I kept on doing it. I still do it. And I look back and go, wow, kids grow up fast. That was free. So, all right, I am Joshua Schaa, as you mentioned, and I am the second generation of Lighthouse Electric and Solar. I want to talk a little bit, shameless self-promotion, if you haven't stopped by our booth, a little bit about who we are. This is me, obviously, that one, and my father-in-law. Back in 2009, that was actually taken in Zimbabwe. We were putting in a solar water pumping system for an orphanage. So that's kind of where our roots started for me in solar. And a little bit about what we do. And just so you guys know, there will be a Q&A at the end, so save your questions. And I'm missing parts of my slides there. Did words show up and I missed them? No, okay. Sorry about that. Words show up there? No. There's some words. I don't remember where we're on those words. I was going to use the slides. Oh, here's some words. I just didn't wait long enough. Very impatient at the end of the day. All right, so we're founded in 2006 by my father-in-law, as I mentioned. He's been living off grid since 1989, back a little after Clay, or a little right around the same time as Clay. And that's kind of what started the whole journey. And then I bought the business in January of 2022 and was able to transition it. He still works with us, which I greatly appreciate doing with him. All right. Now we will wait patiently. There it is. All right. So like we said, we're located in Cochise County. The intro said right here in Cochise County. We're obviously not in Cochise County. So right there in Cochise County. We're right on the other side of the hill in Pierce. And we are licensed residential and commercial contractors, electrical contractors. And as I've said, we are a family business. All right. Services that we offer, we specialize in off-grid solar. We do installations, we do repairs, we do design work. I've done drawings for people that I went out and looked at what they were doing, and I helped them get their drawing package together for the county. And that was the last I ever saw of them, all the way over to doing installations for people that I've never met. We do grid tie solutions as well. We do a lot of repair work in that space. We find a lot of contractors don't like coming back to work on their stuff later. We'll do it. We do upgrades, designs, all the same there. We're also a Kohler sales and service dealer for generators. So we can do standby generators. They're completely independent of solar systems or full backups to off-grid systems. And then we also do the repair work and service work on them as well. We also do solar inspections. So that's how I know Penny is doing solar real estate transactions. I did get involved in one that was being used as a lawsuit to get the installer to come back and correct problems. And they ended up pulling all the panels off and redoing the entire job. That was less fun. That felt a little more stressful, writing that report, knowing that some lawyer was going to look at it. We also like to do solar education. A lot of people buy a house. They don't know what they bought. They got an off-grid property. They don't know what they own now. And so we'll come out, we'll meet with them and explain what they have. And also we do electrical work, new installations, repairs, upgrades, all that fun stuff. All right. So I want to talk this morning about mistakes that I see on a very regular basis that are committed by the professionals. Sometimes we should say professionals. Some of these may or may not have been committed by that company. But we corrected them. So one of the things that we see a lot is going to be unsealed roof penetrations, especially on conduit runs, usually not on the panels, but this one here, this was taken, last week, right, Clay? Yes, sir. Real estate inspection. This thing was installed 6 months ago, but don't worry about it. What was it that Adam was saying? Adam, right? Water's probably going to get in somehow, especially if you do nonsense like that. That is very common. We see it all the time. So something to pay attention to, and just make sure that you're being aware. If you're putting holes in a roof, pay attention to the, what did he call them? Layers? No. Control layers. Thank you. All right. Not accounting for shade. This is a fun one. We run into it a lot. Solar panels. There's a lot of things that help with solar panels these days with their shade mitigation. This one, customer called, said the solar system they put in just doesn't do what I thought it would do. And I showed up and went, huh. Well, here's the fun one. For those of you that look at it, you're like, wow, there's a lot of shade. But if you actually look at this right here, from there to there, the panels shaded themselves extensively. Arizona, 1.5 times is the minimum. So if whatever comes up, if it comes up 3 feet, you need to go, I'm going to do hard math, 2 feet. If it comes up 2 feet, you got to go back 3 feet, 1.5 times. So the solution on this one was very easy. We got to redo the whole job. They also had mixed hardware on here, which is also a no-no. So they used one railing company and other attachments, but don't worry, they used different brand attachments there and different brand attachments there. So it was extra special. But anyway, so yeah, that was me pointing out. I didn't know I'd have a laser. All right. Not following the installation needs, best practices, guidelines, all of those types of things. So you look at this, you go, wow, this is a pretty nice looking ground mount, right? Looks good. Someone did pretty good work. They even looks like it's not sinking too badly. That's actually because the customer corrected it a lot of times as the ground settled. But what you actually find here is you zoom in, as you see these are made by Iron Ridge, and that attachment is supposed to have a piece that goes right there to mimic the height of the panel, so that when that piece tightens down, it's a big washer up there, it's supposed to tighten down evenly on both sides. Typically goes between 2 panels. In this case, they forgot what's called a stopper sleeve. They did it on all the panels. Don't worry. They were very uniform in their mistake. And so I was able to walk up to this array on the bottom side, and I grabbed the bolt and I went like this, click, click, and I was holding it. So don't worry, there's no wind in Arizona. So we got the privilege of correcting all of those as well. All right. Not installing panels inside their strength profiles. This is a very common mistake. I see it more than I don't. This one's pretty obvious, right? You look at this. So what it is this panel is tested on their frame on where they can hold their own weight for wind, for their vibration, for their twisting, and to stay inside their strength profile. Their guidebooks will tell you what KPA they tested to and where you need to be attaching. And that's been changing quite a bit as new modern panels are coming out. Used to be within like 9 or 10 inches from the top. I've got panels now I'm allowed to install within 24 inches, but it just varies. So you got to look it up. You got to look at what panel you have. You go look at the spec. It'll tell you. This one's pretty obvious, right? This one's shooting way off there. What you can't see is there's a chimney up here that someone was trying to solve the problem on. So once again, we got to pull all those panels off and redo the entire job. But this one, so this is the obvious one, but these all were that way. They were all way outside their strength profile. So they were the weakest that the panel could possibly be for dealing with wind and longevity. And when you're putting up something, as Clay was talking about, that we expect to last well past 25 years, you want to make sure that you're not setting them up for failure by making them so that when they flex, they're going to break themselves. So that's just something to be aware of and something to look at. And we see it a lot from the professionals. All right, wire types, not using the correct types of PV wire. So National Electric Code requires that when you're running your wire off of your solar panels, you use what is called USE2, and that stands for Underground Service Entrance. But it must be rated and state PV wire on it. It's the same product. They just want to know for the inspectors, and they can go over there and look at it. And what that means is it has a crazy thick insulation on it. Man, that picture is nonsense. Sorry about that. I didn't realize how dark that would turn out. That's actually a great picture because it shows one next to each other. But what it's got on the top row is the panel wire. and it actually states PV wire. Is your guys' angle better than mine? Not really. This one actually states PV wire. Thank you, Tim. Right there, it's upside down though. And on my computer screen, it was a little bit more obvious. This one here actually is just regular building wire, not PV wire. THHN is what it would be listed as. You go down to Home Depot and you can buy that product. It is not rated to be in the sun. And this is actually a larger gauge than that one, which you can't see in this picture, but you'll see the difference because the USC2 will almost have as thick of an insulation as it does in copper. So it's designed to be in the sun for its entire life. That said, best practice, don't put it in the sun and it'll probably last even longer, right? But that's just something to pay attention to. And we find this quite a bit as well. Not as much, but we still find that one quite a bit. Not securing the ladder. This might be a mistake made by professionals. If you're going to get up on a roof, tie off your ladder because the dummy standing there is the dummy standing here. But don't worry, we had 4 guys on site that day, all on their roof. You got it, Bill, man. You got a crystal ball, don't you? What was crazy about this, so we sat there and stared at it while we contemplated terrible ideas. And we actually had ratchet straps up with us that day because there was a little bit of breeze. And so we had our panels under ratchet straps to make sure nothing could pick them up. So we took a ratchet strap and after after many tries, we were able to hook part of the ladder. And with 3 of us, we were able to pull that thing back up and then we tied it off. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, that was, so do that, be safe on roofs. We were in a hurry. We were trying to get done because we knew it was supposed to get really windy. So we were just get up on the roof and get moving. Will this video play, Tim? Let's find out. I think if I advance it, it'll tell me. Yeah, so this is actually just a regular breaker. And right here, there's probably not noise, is there? That's fine. So that, when I did that right there, that arced inside that breaker. Made poppy crackly noises. I learned that when I was talking to the customer and I said, this right here is your back-fed PV breaker. This is a grid tie system. And I touched it and it made the sounds an electrician never wants to hear. And I ended up about like 6 feet away. She thought I got shocked. She was like ready to call 911. I was like, no, I'm just terrified. But what they had done is they had undersized their breaker and they were overfeeding that breaker. It should have been a 50, not a 40. Thankfully, their wire size was correct. So I was able to run to town, get the right breaker, come back, fix it. I looked like a rock star because I touched a breaker and figured something out. But so making sure that we're paying attention to that. What actually happened on the site is originally that was done correctly. And then they came in and did an upgrade and no one thought about the breaker. And then a homeowner bought it and then their solar system stopped working and they called me and I went out there and found that. But that is something that I found more than once from professionals. Oh, hey, look at that. I'm able to advance the video too. All right. Another problem that we find is not sealing your conduit. This is not a water pipe. We were cutting this to make a modification. And then it started doing that. And we're like, what pipe did we just cut? Yep. So they had not glued their conduit uphill. And thankfully it went up and over across the room down into the equipment. And that was taller than the hill. So the water never made it to the equipment. But yeah, that was a fun one to cut into. And we're like, oh, we got a problem to deal with. But that is very common as well. People love not to use glue on their conduit. Spend the extra $1 and please glue your conduits. Not plugging all your openings. This is also another common problem. I will go through on all of my openings, small little ones because of dust and all kinds of stuff, termites, ants, and I will silicone every single opening into a box. But this one was a little more obvious. You see right here, these people had failed to close up that opening right there on the bottom of this outdoor electrical box. And some mud divers got in, made a nest, and that's not supposed to be black. That was supposed to be white. Their off-grid system was tripping off, saying that they had a short somewhere, and we found it. There it was. I actually don't know if this was homeowner installed or professionally installed. So this is the only picture up here that I know of that I'm not 100% certain I took on a professional installation. No, wait, that's not true. I got another one. Sorry. But I've seen this a lot from pros as well. So just check your openings, make sure they all get closed up. And duct tape won't last. So don't try that. There's our opening. There it is there. All right. Not programming your charge settings to match your battery types. This is less and less of an issue as we get into lithium and closed loop technology and all kinds of super fun stuff there. This is actually, here's my note. Yep, this is a DIY install, but I've seen it with pros. I just had this picture from Wednesday, so it was way easier. I actually texted the guys when I was making this. Sorry, Tim, I was late on getting you the presentation. I was working on it. I texted the guys on Thursday, like, send me a picture of that battery, please. So this is one of the batteries here. And that is because they put it on and they never checked the charge parameters. That battery is not supposed to have a bump in it. There's no baseballs trying to escape the inside of your batteries, I promise. But for some reason, I showed up to do a diagnosis, like, there's your problem. Okay, bye. It was easy, but yes. So just be aware, make sure, especially in lithium. Lithium is very, very sensitive to being charged and how it's charged and its charge profiles and all the brands. We're in a new world of lithium, and everybody, new world that is lithium, and everybody is rapidly bringing things to market, and the charge parameters from one brand to the next are very, very different. Some guys like, yeah, hold it at this voltage all day long. Other guys would bring it to that voltage for 6 minutes, then drop it back to this voltage. And other guys like this one for an hour, and then that one. They all are different, and you've got to check them. And you got to make sure that the equipment that you're using to charge them is correct, because you can go out and buy a nice expensive lithium battery. It comes with a nice healthy warranty, and then you're at fault because you messed up your charge parameters. Trust me, when you're talking a couple $1,000s on a battery, they're going to check. And they're going to smoke, you're going to smoke a battery. I've seen it done. And I don't want it to happen to you guys. I don't want it to happen to me either. So the other thing that we find is pulling on the wires that come out of the panels too hard. So you want soft turns on these. So this is a junction on the back of a solar panel for those of you that don't live underneath solar panels, such as myself. That wire, most specs will give you your turn radius that they want. Typically, easy number is you want to take it to the frame. That's a pretty easy. If it's going sideways, just go to the frame and make a nice gentle arc. If it's going up, then I like to run them the opposite direction. So if it's pointing up, I'll install the panel so my wire is going to go the opposite direction of the up. So I get a nice loop to the frame and then go the other direction. And if it's going down, I flip it, right? And so that's what we're paying attention to when we're putting in panels, and just being aware of that. This was previously featured in this. No, it wasn't, but I mentioned it. Every single one on this. This was the real estate inspection for the attorneys. And I talked to the homeowner the other day, and they came back in and they had to remove every single panel and reinstall brand new ones, because that right there is going to shorten the life of that panel. Eventually, you're going to start getting shorts around that, and you're going to have a shortened life on your panel. So just be aware of that. Make sure you're making nice gentle arcs. Don't use zip ties. You'll see zip ties on my installations. I tell my entire crew, zip ties are for shaping. We use metal clips on all of our panel frames. You go find older installations we used to do that on. We try to iterate. We try to learn and do better the next time. But I like to use zip ties to help shape my wire and then hold it there. And then in 20 years or in 5 years, when that zip tie gets brittle and breaks off, the wire is going to stay right where I wanted it to stay. It's just to hold it there. It's just a temporary shaping thing. It's not permanent to hold that wire in place. So you can get these nice little panel clips and they hold them on nicely. All right. That was all that I had off of various problems that I've run into doing this. All of those were mistakes made by professionals. I didn't bring up DIYers because I don't want to, we're not sitting here going to be pointing fingers, but I just wanted to show you guys some of the stuff that we've seen. So hopefully if you guys are doing your own work, that's something you can learn from. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. No? All right. Yes, sir. Yes. Yep. It just can't go outside a conduit. So you would bring your USC2 or your PV wire, and you got to get it into a junction box in some way so you can make a connection to that type of wire. You could use a fuse block or anything like that. But yeah. Typically it depends on distance. And then difficulty in installation and how much you want to, like, we come prepared. We got all of our conduit. We got all of our fittings. But if it's like a 5-foot run and you just got to make a jump into a building, it might be way simpler than having to make an adaptation and switching to conduit and all that stuff just to run it with the regular PV wire. But again, it's like I installed an RV outlet for my little brother yesterday. And he was like, this is way more complicated than I was going to make it. I was like, well, if you were going to do it, obviously, but I happen to have a truck with all the tools and all the parts and all the pieces. So we'll do it this way because I have all those parts and pieces. But if you don't in your own home, there's nothing wrong with running PV wire direct. Yes, Penny. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So this lady, lots of fun. She lived on a property that's been off grid. She's living in her husband's grandparents' built house. So it was super adobe thick walls, built that thick to stop Geronimo soldiers' arrows, legit. Because there was legitimately, they lived on a spring right down by the border. And we went in there, they had a 12-volt system, very minimal. And it took a lot of trust, took a lot of time in establishing a relationship because they're out in the middle of nowhere. And so we just kind of spent a lot of time. And her dad had passed away and he had been a tinkerer with off-grid systems, and he had an off-grid system in his house in Sierra Vista. And so we went and looked at that, and it was a nice system. It was a 48-volt Outback power system that was just kind of sitting there doing nothing. And I said, you know what? I think your dad would really, really love it if we took this nice big system and went and put it on the ranch you live on every single day. I think that would honor your dad, and it's really doing nothing here. And so she agreed to let us do that. So we went in and put in a large upgrade for her. We took all of her batteries, we got them combined. So we doubled up her battery bank. We installed some of the panels that came from her dad's place. So we added to her solar. We effectively doubled her battery bank. Then we put in nice big inverters that could easily run a house in an off-grid situation. And then we finished it all up and we're like, thank you guys so much. We had so much fun installing this. Have a good day. She goes, okay, I'm gonna go start the generator. Whoa, what? Why are you starting a generator? Well, I got to do laundry. No. You do laundry on the solar now. No, I don't. Yes, you do. No, I don't. Yes, you do. She's like, no, I can't do that. It can do that. I promise. Let's do it right now. Let's go get your laundry. And so we got our laundry going. I still don't think she believed me. And her system was online. So I was able later, then a couple days later, I jumped on and I could see when her system was fully charged up and there was nothing going on because the batteries are full. And I circled it on my phone and I wrote, do your laundry. And I texted it to her. And every once in a while, I would get texts from her every couple of weeks telling me what device she had tried. And it blew her mind. She texted me one day. She goes, I used a hairdryer for the first time in 20 years on this property, that is. And I was like, that's awesome. And she'd text me like, I used an Instant Pot today. It was so fun. And so that was a lot of fun, but it was really about what it took for her to know that was we put a device inside her house where she could easily understand what the system was doing. So I walked in there, I said, see this number right here? If this number says 100%, that means your batteries are full. Use your electricity, please. It's doing nothing else. And so it's about having the knowledge to make the decision. And that's one of the benefits of off-grid is you get to live with whatever's happening outside. And so if it's super cloudy for 3 days, not a great time to be using a hairdryer, probably, unless your batteries are full or you got a fancy Kohler automatic start 2-wire start generator installed by yours truly. Then it's just going to fire up and kind of fill in the gaps for you. But yeah, that was always a fun one. And they're near and dear to my heart. Lots of great folks. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have a kid or know of any that you just slap on top of cover holes in the solar panels or comments along that?
I owe you an email, don't I? Did you email me? No? Okay. I got an email, I think, pending that. Okay, cool. I got an email pending. I'm like, this question sounds really familiar. Yeah, so it's all about space, right? And solar panels chew up way more space than even I think they do. I look at a roof, and I'm like, oh, there's lots of room up there. But then you come out and you bring out something that's about effectively the sheet of plywood, and you stick it up there, and it starts chewing up space pretty quick. But usually, what you're going to do there is typically we just attach a railing system, which I don't know if I've got a good picture of any of this. You just attach a railing system, and we usually want to tilt it up because the container is so flat, and so you're just tilting it up, and it's just about how many panels you can put on it. Typically, I find 10 to 12 is about what we can fit on that effectively without building some kind of extra super crazy structure around it. I can hook you up or I can point you in the right direction. But yeah, a lot of times if I'm just selling parts, I'll just send you to my supplier because they're going to do a better job supporting you on doing just a straight part sale. That said, if anybody's like in the middle of a project and you go, oh man, I really need 10 more feet of PV wire or an MC4. I don't run a retail store at my place. This is mostly for the people in my valley. But if you're going that direction, just give us a call. We're happy to meet you on the way. We're going the right direction. I've sold dumb little parts to people because that dumb little part is what you need to make it work today. And we might have it sitting on the shelf. But again, I don't have a retail store, so don't show up like knocking on the door because there's no one there. Yes, Clay. Those are lead acid. Yeah, no, those are sealed lead acid batteries. Although there are a lot of lithiums that have mimicked that size and form factor, but we pulled them out. Trust me, lead acid. I carried them out of there. They were not lithium. That said, if you are trying to do something super creative with lithium, BMS, as Clay was talking about, which stands for the Battery Management System, is the computer that makes sure you're not overcharging or undercharging all the individual cells inside of a lithium battery. You want to make sure you got a good quality one, and then it's working really, really well. If you try to do something super creative, like harvest lithium batteries out of a wrecked car, that's a super cool idea from a sustainability standpoint, right? This thing's just sitting there. Let's take these batteries until they light on fire in your bedroom. Then it's less great because there wasn't a BMS. And someone may have called you and said, please turn off your system. You don't have a BMS. And someone may not have listened. And then they called me and said they lit on fire. So just make sure you got a good BMS. If you're trying to do something super creative, if you stick in the mainstream brands, they all have great BMSs. That's mostly what you're buying, is a warranty and a BMS when you're buying lithium batteries. As the dollar figures change, the warranty changes and the healthiness of the BMS are usually the two things you're buying. Any other questions? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You can buy varying sizes depending on your need. I just buy number 10 because it just kind of solves all of my problems, but typically it's 19 strand. So yes, it comes in multi-strand. Yes, sir. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Find somebody has a sense of their personal, finding your artwork, that's your personal artistry. There's a sense that when you do something, it's you, it's not just I knock the job out.
Yeah, we jokingly talk about printing off stickers, like the presidential stickers that point at the gas pump and say, I did that, right? Yeah, so we love our craft. Every single person that I employ, probably short of my high school lackeys, we work very, very hard at our craft, and we desire to do it better every single day. We take great pride in our work. We take great joy in what we do, and we love being able to go out and do it all over this beautiful area that we live. The work that we do, we work very hard to try to make it last the length of the equipment we're putting in. So if I'm putting in a panel that has a 25-year warranty, the work that I'm doing, I'm working very hard to make sure that it's going to last at least as long or longer as that panel. And so that's just trying to make sure we're making the best decisions, using material wisely, using quality products, so they're going to have a long life. And that means that we can be proud of the work that we do. I greatly look forward to the day that maybe my two boys might be doing this job for me, and they're going to go do service work out there. And I hope they get to walk out there and go, my dad built that, because I get to do that for my father-in-law. I walk out there and go, oh man, I know that guy. I got a call the other day. I had no clue who they were. They called me up and said, oh yeah, we worked with Lighthouse, Bruce Hamburger, my father-in-law, years ago. Great guy. So we want to call. I have no clue who they are. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It was like 15 years ago. And that's a legacy we work hard to build. And a lot of that comes from the craft. And I have many teachers that can attest to the fact that I am not an artist. Many teachers. I had one art class I had to take in college. I brought in a drawing, and the teacher looked at it and said, you tried so hard. I've never seen so many eraser marks on one drawing. I was like, that's an art form, right? Eraser smudges. But in the work that we do, that's where I find my art form. So in the way we do our conduit, the way we put in our panels, or the work that we do, we take great pride in it. The other thing that I'd like to mention is the services that we provide. I will meet you anywhere. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I shared that at the beginning. I've remodeled my own house. I'll meet you anywhere you want to meet. I've gone out and met with people, and I stood there and I picked up a part and I said, see this right here? There's a microphone stand. This is how you install it on your roof. And don't do this, but do this. And make sure you do these things and it'll work out. And I left. And then they called me back and I came back and I went through with a meter and I checked all their wires and I said, you're good. And I turned it on. The gentleman that he referenced, that's who he called me for. I came out there with a meter and I just checked everything before it got turned on at the end. And then I went out and helped him with a firmware update. And that kind of stuff. So I'll do any of that. And then I have customers that I've literally never met. Went out there, looked at a problem, ended up doing an entire system for them. They live remotely. We went and did the entire install. I've maintained that site for many, many years. I have never met them. I'd love to meet them sometime. I enjoy meeting my customers, but anything in between that where you can find that scope here to there, that's the work that we'll do, and we're happy to do it because we want to make it possible for all of you guys to go out and do what you want to do. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Not yet. No. So all the installs that we're doing, everything that we're doing, we do it to the engine. We do it to the engineer standard because I can sleep good at night. And I know I love a good redneck engineering, a little bit of overbuild, nothing wrong with that. But yes, they are guaranteed up to 115 mile an hour is the average. Some say 120, some say but usually 115 is usually what all the ratings on all of our equipment do. And then like the panels that we use the panels that have the strongest frame in the industry. So they flex the least, and then they have the strongest membrane in the industry, so they can flex the most. And I appreciate some redneck engineering right there. So it can bend a lot, but it's not allowed to bend a lot. And so that means in the wind, it's going to be okay. You're all right. The biggest difference there is mostly cost, right? So like you look at this structure here, we had to build all of this underneath this, right? Where if you got a roof, the structure is already built for us. We get to come in and just start working immediately instead of having to build a substructure underneath it. And if you look actually right here, this here is an aluminum railing, and that's the same aluminum railing that would probably go on your roof. And so I always tell people like from here down is extra when you're looking at a ground mount or a roof mount or versus a roof mount or a pole mount, same thing. You're going to have a big difference between the two. But as far as wind goes, no, as long as they're all being attached correctly up to their standards, we're not going to have an issue. That said, funny story, I had a lady call me, probably a month ago or something. She goes, I think my panels are coming off my roof. Not my install. Never heard from this lady before. And I said, probably not. And I checked the weather and it's supposed to be super windy the next day, which was a Saturday. I said, all right, let me see what I can do. So I called one of my guys who was off, said, hey, you want to do some emergency work, help a lady out? Sure. We jumped in the truck, ran over there. The panels were coming off her roof for good reason. They were sitting on her roof. There was 2 panels on one roof and 2 panels on the other. They were held down by the wire. And this is older lady. She's like 83 or something. This is her little retirement place out in the middle of the desert. And the guy who sold her the place threw those up there and said, they're good. They're now good. But at the time I was like, how long have you owned this? 2 years. That's impressive. That blew my mind. I was like texting out pictures to our team chat. I'm like, how long do you think these have been up here? Everybody's like, 2 weeks. I'm like, no, 2 years. That blew my mind. So you never know what might happen. Yes, sir. Hail is, yes. So hail is one of the things. So like the solar panels that I sell come from a company called REC. They've been operating underneath that brand for like 24 and a half years. They're out of Singapore. They use super good quality source material. The reason I love them. And they come with a 25-year warranty. So they come with a 25-year performance warranty. They guarantee 92% of their sticker in the 25th year, which is industry standards. You lose about 1% per year. So these guys say 8, the other guys say 12 and a half or 25. And if you have that, it's still good. They offer a 25-year product warranty if I sell them, which means manufacturing defect, and a 25-year labor warranty if I install them. And the one exception to the whole thing is hail. And the reason for it is hail is impossible to prove. Because when you go out there to take a picture of the hail damage, you hold up hail that was this big, but when it came down, it was this big, right? because it can melt, and there's no good way to identify what size hail was falling at that time. And so that said, the panels that we sell are rated, and I'm going to forget, but it's significant hail size. That's what it says in the spec sheet. No, it's large though, and it's over the industry standard. They protect them from hail, so they're rated for it, but hail is definitely a big factor that can take them out. They actually, in our training with REC, they showed us pictures of places in Texas that got hit with a huge hail. And they said, look at this. And the first thing you look at, you see all these broken panels, right? And they're like, do you know what size hail fell? 6 inch, 4 inch. It was 4 inch, 4 inch hail, was falling out of the sky. And they said, we would like to point out the fact that 85% of the panels aren't broken. They lost 15%. So, but there's no way they're going to guarantee that because there's no way to prove it. So. No, this is a question I got asked the other day, and I actually, I'm doing a little bit of contract work at that big solar farm. And so I asked the operator down there if they do anything to try to prevent storms, and they have storm trackers on those things are articulating. And so they'll know when wind is coming, they'll turn them flat, stuff like that. If the wind gets too high, they'll spin them back. And I asked them, what do you do for hail? I said, pray. Because if you turn them, because they're weak on the bottom, that's usually where we're going to find damage. Someone's, lawnmower or something picks up a rock and hits the back of them. That's usually when they're going to get damaged more than the front. You don't want to try to, turn them sideways. Years ago, my father-in-law did work at a mine, and they called him and said, hey, our phones are down, because there was a phone system. He went in there and said, well, there's rocks through the front of it. We were blasting. Okay. So cover them up before you blast. All right. So they did that, but then the rocks came and they bounced in the back and broke them from behind. So now it's like, okay, so now you cover them in the back and you cover them on the top before you start blasting, guys. But yeah, they are susceptible from every direction. So there's nothing short of buying, a good quality panel, and or you buy the super cheap panels and you got a stack of spares. That's the other great option. I've seen it used. Anyone else? Yes, sir. That one's Iron Ridge. Yes, sir. Typically, they don't need to be retorqued. But when we do a final on the entire system, we go back through and put one more torque on all of them just to make sure we got them all good and snug. But you just reach really, really far. You don't want to lean on a panel. That's something I couldn't prove. I didn't have any pictures of, but I know it gets done. There's something called microfracturing that can happen on a solar panel. So if you apply pressure where you're not supposed to, namely everywhere in there, you will in time create what's called microfractures because you've stressed the membrane on the inside. And so if you lean your weight down on a knee or on a hand, it didn't break. Seems like it was good. But in 10 years, your panel is going to fail. And it's a non-warranty item oftentimes because it was user inflicted. The story that we got told is actually a guy posted a YouTube video of walking up on his solar panels talking about, look how great solar is. And then about 10 years later, all his panels started failing. And he had sent the YouTube video to the guy who manages REC's warranty claims. And he's like, you did that. No, I didn't. And he sent him the YouTube link back. So he said, even then, I still took care of him. We took care of the panels for him. But it was absolutely his problem. But yeah, so you want to avoid that. So just long reaching is usually what it is. Or if we know we can't get back to it, before we move on, we go through and retorque one more time just to make sure they're good and snug. Yeah, I haven't found the need to. But if I'm up on a roof, I'll go through and check them. But again, like you're saying, if they're really hard to get to, I'm going to trust that they're tight more than I'm going to try to break a panel, try to get to them. But it's a good approach. Yes, sir. Wind turbines are always a fun conversation. We don't use a lot of them these days. And the reason for it goes back to what Clay was talking about. Solar panels are so cheap. Wind turbines you've introduced moving parts, right? They're awesome and they work great. And you get power when there's a storm and you get power at night. And that's really great. One aside before I forget is they don't play well with lithium because they surge so much. So you have to put fancy controllers on them. The only one that I found, I haven't actively looked for a recent one. So feel free to Google me wrong. But the one that I found was from Missouri Wind and Solar, and it was about $3,000 for the setup. And all that is, that's not even the fan. That was just the controller setup to make sure that it was precise enough to charge a lithium bank. And so that's one problem we're running into these days with them. But the big thing is we got moving parts. And the other thing is you got to look at your wind analysis. And so a lot of times you look at the fan, you're like, it's always windy here, right? And that's how it feels. And a lot of times in this valley it is, maybe more so than our valley. But then you got to look at the wind turbine specs. And a lot of times they say that they really don't do very much of anything until you exceed 10 mile an hour sustained, which is actually quite a bit. And then they'll do okay. But at 23 mile an hour sustained, that's when they hit their rating. And that's when they're doing really good. But at 25 mile an hour sustained, they shut themselves off so they don't blow up. And so usually that's not all of them. That's a lot of them. And those were some made up numbers, but they're pretty close to accurate. And so you just got to really know what you're looking at. And you don't want to go spend a whole bunch of money thinking you're going to get a whole bunch of power out of that. I had a customer who went out and bought a 4,000 watt fan, or wind turbine, as they call them in the industry. And he put it up and he was all proud of it. And we went and put a separate tracker on it. And that thing participated very, very little to his solar system, because the wind was so varying. And when he saw the data after a couple of months of that through March, and then he looked at that data, he's like, I should have bought a couple more solar panels. I agree. So that's usually what we find. You got the moving part factor. Most of them come with like a 5-year warranty. And if you can just throw up a couple more solar panels with the cost of a solar panel, it usually kind of offsets it. And that's usually our approach. The other thing that I find, this is just a technician standpoint, the calmest day in southeastern Arizona, I guarantee it, is the day you call me to look at your wind turbine to see if it's working. Guarantee it. Get out of the truck. Ooh, it's windy. Grab the meter, close the door, dead calm. That's just the way it works. And I've been standing around, you're like sitting around. Yeah, so you get a noise factor too. So there's some that are starting to come out that are, they're moving towards the horizontal spinners instead of the, other way around, vertical spinners, not horizontal spinners. They're supposed to be better on those factors. I don't have experience with them. But there's a reason we don't see commercial wind farms in our area, because we don't have long sustained winds, which is what it takes to run them. Thank goodness we don't have commercial wind farms. But that's kind of our experience. Anyone else? Questions? That's it? All right.